Yama, Miss Haley here. I wanted to touch base and talk to everyone about a question I had very recently. It was a very important question that I felt was important to address. So one of our beautiful families came to me and they have just started working with some Steiner materials and some Waldorf, and they said, Haley, some of these stories, they're really, really dark. What's the go here? Why are we reading these folk tales with such heavy, things happening? It's a very, very good question. So, as you know, as most people know, a lot of folk tales, especially the older ones, have quite dark themes, and over time we have essentially diluted those themes when we're telling stories to our children. And really it's about age appropriateness. However, when it comes to these fairy tales and these folk tales that we tell in main lesson with our children, and we really pull them apart and have a look and dissect them, we see the villain and we see the hero. We see witches, dragons. We see the hero having to overcome the bad and the evil within these stories. And these wicked villains can do really horrendous things to our characters. There can be violence and there can be scary moments for the children, and there can be death. These dark things that reflect the reality of life are within these stories in a much safer way, because this is not happening to the children, but it's happening to these characters in the stories. And the children can see that there's a sense of hope with these villains defeating the evil and triumphing in the end. Sometimes if there's a sad ending or a bad ending, it's also another way to demonstrate dark things happening in a safe environment, such as death or the loss of a loved one, the loss of a pet, losing the sense of self. All of these deeper things that happen to children around them and people. This is why stories are so important and so fundamental when it comes to our psyche. The archetypes within the stories reflecting people in our lives and how to deal with these situations that come up. Sometimes too, it's important to find stories that reflect things that are happening in the children's lives that aren't easy, so that they can open up a safe space for dialogue in relation to those things. Stories connect us, they enchant us, and sometimes they frighten us. It is really important though that when you're reading these stories, you really think about your audience, and if you feel like something is a little bit too dark, definitely alter some of the wording. I remember my first grade 1 Steiner class. There was a box of beautiful folk tales for me too that were just so nourishing and divine, but there were a couple in that box where I went, oh, I am not reading that. Not reading that to a grade 1 child. Some of them couldn't be sort of amended even really to make it less frightening. So I was able to choose a really beautiful variety of stories for prep from grade 1 and even up into the older years for Modern Waldorf Online. But there are definitely some moments where parents need to read the stories or change the wording, or if there's something particularly triggering, for their child at that time, that's important to really know what's going on in their lives and take that into consideration, especially with some of the stories with the Greek mythology can be very violent and rough. And this is a time in year 6 when they are really looking at the world around them. They're listening to the news, they're hearing about the bad guys and the villains, and Greek mythology is just a really, really beautiful set of stories for that particular age group, and heavy. And the Vikings in particular for grade 4, I think really the main concern is prep and grade 1 with the magical folk tales like Grimm's real fairy tales that can get quite raw. So while it's important to have those villains and those dark moments in those stories because it's reality and reflects reality, no, we have to keep safe and look after each other and ourselves, and we have to be kind and we have to have morals. Just be mindful too of your own children and who they are and what you feel is best for them. But please, by all means, still read folk tales no matter what. They're beautiful and they're so rich linguistically. And it's so important and such a lovely way to engage with your child. Last bit of information would be just to read the story yourself first and then just retell it in your own words in a way that you feel is better for you. That's all. Thanks. Bye.